all other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people across the country, to elders past and present. We do have a code of conduct. There's a sort of basic spiel up here, but it really basically just boils down to please be decent to each other. Online, you can find a website, melb.awsug.org.au. You can find us on LinkedIn as AWS User Group Melbourne. We are on Mastodon. We have made the Twitter/X obsolete now, so you can find us on Mastodon, AWS Melb at AWS Community Social, and naturally the YouTube channel to which the streams get posted up. I will hand over to Matt to run us through the agenda and a little bit more information.
Okie dokie. Right. So yes, little bit off key this month. Few of the organisers obviously not here. We're going to have our introductions, i.e. this. We'll come up with the follow-up with what's new section. Then we've got Bharat talking about unlocking the power of Control Tower. Followed that up with a talk from Michael on mastering AWS CloudFormation. At the end, we'll do our standard marketplace segment. People looking for work, people looking for people. We can have a conversation. We tend not to have people looking for work raise their hands in case your boss happens to be, watching the live stream or sitting next to you, and you probably don't want him to know you're looking for work elsewhere. But we'll have people, raising their hands if they're looking for people, and you can go and sort of tee up with them after the fact. Should be done and dusted by about 8 o'clock. As we sort of mentioned before, we're online in all the usual places. If you have a question and you're watching online, please feel free, whack it in the Melbourne channel in our Slack or in the YouTube chat, and we'll make sure that they're asked in due course. Can't put on these sorts of events without our wonderful sponsors. So big thank you to our gold sponsor, CMD. Your support makes these sorts of things possible, and our silver sponsors, Versant and Sevo. I will have a little bit of a chat about sponsors in a minute, because there is an opportunity if you would like your logo up on there for next year. Let's have a chat. We also can't forget our venue sponsor, NAB, for letting us use this space every month. So thank you to NAB. As mentioned, we've got a Slack. Feel free. We're up over 1,000 users on our Slack now. Conversations sort of range from a lot of conversations on outage, who, what, where, when, why. If you want to know if it's not just you or if it's a wider issue, come post a message. People are always sort of online to give you a hand. We've also had some people asking questions, how do I'm getting started, where do I? Feel free. Like, the community is more than willing to, provide some advice, provide some guidance, or it's a pretty friendly place, all in all. Also, if you're wanting to help out put these sorts of events on, volunteers channel. Got to set up chairs, put the tables out at the beginning and the end of every night. So always keen to find people willing to help, which gets us into the getting involved section. So putting these events on every month, ordering the food, not a hard task. The What's New segment, for those of you who haven't been following along, that's automated now. We don't need to worry too much about that. It's speakers. We are always on the hunt for new speakers. If you've spoken before, if you've never spoken at an event, more than happy to have you come up and discuss something. It can be as simple as a five minutes on, hey, I just learned this new cool thing, up to, full, 30, 40-minute conversations on, a 300 level, why Kubernetes is a bad idea. Go back and look at my presentation from last year, read that one. So, more than happy if you want to have a chance. We've also got some experienced speakers in the group. So if you're wanting to get started, but sort of want someone to give you a hand putting the presentation together, want someone to hear you out, anything like that, again, post it in the Slack channel. People are more than happy to spend some time with you sort of going over it. As for sponsors, sponsorship, we are starting to look for sponsors for 2024. We are opening it up to a fourth sponsor, so a third silver sponsor. So if your organization is looking for a wonderful meetup or user group to sponsor and you'd like to get involved, come and talk to moi at some point in time throughout the night. And I can, have a conversation with you. We've got a prospectus and all of that around, some numbers and some information for your finance people to sort of go over. But yeah, more than keen to sort of hear from people. And as I mentioned before, volunteers, always looking for volunteers to sort of help out. But with that sort of out of the way, what's sort of coming up? That's all about us, all right, and what we want. The community at large, what's going on? So obviously the big one, this is October. Next month is November. November means reInvent in Vegas. Who's going to Vegas? A couple of people might be going to Vegas. Okay, we got a few people going to Vegas. I have to go for reInvent. Not for reInvent. I'm just going to Vegas for fun. Yeah, don't look. If you are going to Vegas for reInvent this year, do not forget the tattooing session, where you can go and get a tattoo of your favorite. And it's Vegas, man. 29th of November through 1st of December. There are still tickets available last time I checked. However, hotel rooms are, you're probably not going to want it. You're probably out of options on the main strip at about this point in time. As for the rest of us, back at home, we've got the AWS Programming and Tools meetup week after next, up at 727 Collins Street. They are talking about implementing AI ops for serverless applications. That's actually being presented by AWS, so it should be a good session on getting started with AI ops in, serverless applications, I guess. The other one that's coming up is the serverless meetup at CMD Solutions on the 16th of November. I don't believe they've got a topic for that one or speakers for that one yet. So if you are looking for an opportunity to talk about serverless, reach out to the team there, contact detail. There are people from that user group in our Slack channel, so sort of do a call out if you're interested in speaking at that one. Also, if you represent or are a part of a user group or a meetup in Melbourne and we're not currently presenting your meetup, feel free to let us know what your group is, what it's about, when it is, and we'd be more than happy to sort of add your meetup details to the slide. Really keen about making sure that we can sort of share what's going on in the Melbourne tech community. And with that, we are up for the What's New section. So I will hand back to Dawn to go through the wonderful things that have been this month, except for the stuff that was released today because I didn't get a chance to update the slide pack.
And fortunately for everyone involved, given that we're running on a skeleton crew and I'm the only one up here, the lectern mic is actually working today, which means that I have one hand rather than 0 hands. So, as per usual, as per recently usual, we kick off our What's New in AWS with finally in Melbourne. DynamoDB Global Tables is now available in Melbourne, which also means it's available everywhere. If you happen to be doing your disaster recovery and you want to have everything in Australia, now is your opportunity to be able to actually run it cross-region. Also, EC2 Instance Connect is now in Melbourne. More ways to actually get into your EC2 instances. I'm remarkably surprised that this one hadn't made it to Melbourne already, but such it is. Finally, in Sydney, we have got the Graviton, some of the Graviton instances, the Generation 7 Graviton instances coming to Sydney. We also have the EC2 high memory instances. I have given up on trying to remember what all the post fixes for the EC2 instances mean, because there are so many of them now. So if you want to know what these instances do, I recommend you go and look it up. That the G does refer to Graviton. Today in databases, Postgres 16 is available in preview. As per usual, we're about a version behind the RDS version of Postgres is about a version behind the version of Postgres, the most recent version of Postgres. So we would expect 17. I don't think 17's been released yet. We would expect 17 to be released fairly soon. RDS for Oracle supports more types of instances. I don't necessarily know how many people are using RDS for Oracle. I would like to think most people have migrated off that by now. If you happen to still be using that, I would love to hear about your use cases for that. Also, SQL Server, probably not a database engine that too many people are using on RDS, but you can now stop and start those on demand. And you, again, if you are using SQL Server, you get SQL level metrics through Performance Insights now. We have some compute optimized AMD, the C7A instances, the AMD instances have been released. This is fairly good. Generally, if you are using a comparable AMD instance to the Intel instances, I believe you generally get about a 10%. I forget if it's a 10% performance improvement or a 10% cost saving, but very often there is, if you can run your stuff on those AMD instances, there is generally a sort of cost saving built in. AMI block public access now enabled for all new accounts and existing accounts with no public AMIs. This is another one of those announcements which I really wish we'd had sort of, I don't know, from the beginning a few years ago, but along with the recent changes to the S3 ACLs, again, it is good that we're seeing AWS starting to tighten up some of these sort of these quirks which have introduced security issues in the past. So that's one that I am very, very glad to see. Data. Amazon Data Zone is now generally available. This is basically the release announcement for this is word salad. So in trying to condense this, it's basically an AI-powered categorizer, which allows you to send data queries off to Redshift and Athena. Probably most people who are doing that sort of data categorization at any sort of high level will have categorized it themselves. But again, there's probably some use case somewhere for that. Glue now supports GitLab and Bitbucket as well. Containers, everybody's favorite. But we actually don't get to rag on the EKS announcement this month. I'm looking at, I can see a few people kind of chuckling. The general opinion of Kubernetes here is very well known. See also Matt's presentation from last year on why you should probably not use Kubernetes. But for those of you who are using Kubernetes, for people in big enterprises where you do have that use case for Kubernetes, EKS extended support for Kubernetes versions is now available in preview. This is great because it gets you out of the cycle of having to upgrade everything once every 3 to 6 months, which is one of the bigger problems out there with Kubernetes, that the release cycle is so tight that you very often end up having to run upgrades very short intervals. AppRunner launches improvements for using custom domains. This is great. If you're running something on AppRunner, before, if you wanted to run it on a custom domain, no matter where you had the custom domain, you had to go set everything up yourself, including SSL certificates. Now, if your custom domain is on Route 53, you could just plug it in and AWS will do all of it for you. This is great. Significantly reduces the complexity involved in setting up a custom domain for something that you're running on AppRunner. Machine learning, speaking of the word AI, Amazon Bedrock is now generally available. This is the AWS generative AI service, which I admit with a little bit of cynicism, I kind of have to look at this and go, yeah, this is basically just an excuse for AWS to print money. Although Matt suggests that the price was not as hideously steep as he thought it was going to be. If you do want to play around with that sort of generative AI, large language model type thing, Bedrock is now generally available. It's there.
No free tier, and if you've got AWS credits, they won't cover
apply. Bedrock. Yes, the AWS credits not applying to Bedrock is actually a really important call out here. So if you want to play around with this, please be aware that you will potentially run up a very large bill in a very short period of time. There's a few SageMaker announcements. I don't really have enough of an understanding of any of this except to say that SageMaker, as per usual, it's gone from being a service to basically a full-featured suite, which will allow you to do anything that you want to do with machine learning. AWS continues to expand that out. Otherwise, I am the least qualified person here to talk about machine learning, most likely. Networking, I get the specifics of the NLB improvements correct. So for the NLB improvements, UDP connection termination by default. So NLB now times out UDP connections for you. This is really good because you used to run into issues where UDP connections would remain always open, and so you would have those long-lasting connections, very big connection pools. Now you can gracefully terminate those long-lived connections, which should be a great performance improvement for anyone who is doing that sort of thing. You also have disabled connection termination for unhealthy targets. So if your target fails health checks by default, the NLB will terminate that connection for you. You can now turn that on or off. So if you want those connections to maintain, even if the targets are unhealthy, you can now toggle that yourself. That's potentially very useful for use cases where you might be setting up connections and you might occasionally expect them to fail, or if you have things which might briefly show as unhealthy when they're cycling. And you've got the availability zonal DNS affinity. So this is basically resolving IP addresses to the if it's possible to resolve NLB connections IP addresses in the same availability zone, NLB will do that for you by default. This is great. Bunch of performance improvements across the board. Route 53 traffic flow now supports geo-proximity routing to AWS local zones. So if you want to turn this on, you can now send traffic to Perth. You can now send people's traffic to Auckland. It gives you more options for geo-proximity routing to, or if you are using geo-proximity routing, it gives you more options for where you can send those connections to, which is potentially really valuable for areas which don't have full-fledged AWS regions. And through Resource Access Manager, you can now share application recovery controller clusters across multiple AWS accounts. Good to see the improvements there to disaster recovery. Serverless. Lambda supports IPv6 for outbound connections. Will this be the thing which will finally get us to the point of more IPv6 support in across the industry? I have absolutely no idea. Your guess is as good as mine. Probably not. And Lambda test events are now available in the SAM CLI. Essentially allows you to test your Lambda functions directly. Dev and Ops. Code pipeline. A lot of people have been talking about the some of the code pipeline updates. I believe there are a couple more that came out which didn't make it onto the slides. So we'll talk about those next month. But for this month, code pipeline now supports retrying a pipeline execution from the first action in a failed stage, rather than having to retry the whole thing, which is a good improvement. It's something that most CI/CD tools have been able to do since their inception. It is good that Code Pipeline is finally doing it. It means that it's kind of progressing towards being a viable solution if you want everything in the AWS environment. EventBridge announces support for wildcard filters in rules. This is cool because it allows you to basically allowing you to wildcard allows you to send more information from point A to point B without needing to potentially set up multiple rules. You can set up EventBridge rules to capture a lot more information using the wildcard filters. The other one that's worth calling out there is Service Catalog now supports additional IAC provisioning tools. Other cool stuff, and yes, the announcements do say both AWS workspaces and Amazon workspaces. Don't ask us why that is. Also, we've got an Amazon Connect announcement, which means that Matt over there will be very happy. Now supports multiple out-of-the-box chat widgets per instance. I know nothing about what that means. Hopefully at some point we'll have an update to the Amazon Connect presentations. AWS Health now aggregates health events in your organization to EventBridge. Again, using EventBridge as that central point of communication more to the wildcard rules allow you to get more data out. This allows you to get more information in, which is really good if you want to monitor those sorts of things. For the Workspaces upgrades, Workspaces now supports Windows Server 2022 bundles. We've got G4DN bundles for Ubuntu desktops. So if you want to run an Ubuntu desktop on a graphics optimized instance, you can now do that. And you have bundle selection guidance in the AWS console. I've not tried that. I don't know how good it is. If anyone does happen to use Workspaces, I would be curious to see how that works. Then I will hand it back over to Matt to introduce our first speaker.
Probably should have gotten some notes about who this first speaker is. Well, nah. Okay, Bharat, I guess this is up to you now. So Bharat is going to talk to us about unlocking the power of AWS Control Tower. So you've done this before, so I'm assuming that should work. So this. Give me 1 second to just make sure I can get that. Yep, cool. It's done.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you, everyone, for joining me today to talk about Control Tower. Actually, this is my second talk here. A couple of months ago, I gave a presentation on AppStream, and yet they allowed me again to come here and talk. So thanks to the organizers. A little bit about me. I am AWS consultant working with Sivo. I have been in IT industry for last 14 years now. And I have been in AWS ecosystem for last 6 to 7 years. And I have been lucky enough to work with different shapes and sizes of organizations. And my area of expertise is in DevOps and infrastructure. So today I want to share some experiences which I had over the last couple of years. And I just want to emphasize on the foundation. It does not matter how big or small your organization is, but I have realized that having a solid foundation is important for everyone. However, having a solid foundation without compromising any governance or security. So today we'll talk about how Control Tower can help you with that. I'll be talking about a case study where one of my clients wanted to grow very rapidly. However, their processes of setting up the AWS accounts and stuff was actually dragging the whole organization down, and how we help them to set up the control tower, and which actually fixed the issue. So the agenda of today's session is we'll understand why do we need a multi-account setup, and what are some common challenges which comes through that, and how control tower can help us to fix that. And then we'll jump onto the case study, and then we'll talk a little bit about security. So how many of you are using more than one AWS account at the moment? Quite a few, right? And some of you might be wondering, why do we need multiple AWS accounts, right? Can't we have just a single AWS account and have all the resources, all the environments in a single account? Technically, you can. There is no issue with that. However, by working with different clients and working in different kind of setups, I have seen some common challenges which comes with that. So just to get our basics right, let's understand what is an AWS account first. AWS account is nothing, it's just a container where you deploy your AWS resources. It provides a natural security around your resources. So resources in account A cannot talk to resources in account B naturally by default. And it provides access and billing boundary. So whatever you deploy in that account, you will be charged for that. So this is exactly like when you go to a grocery store, you pick a basket, you put stuff in that, and whatever you pick, you pay for that. What I have observed, as organizations grow, they have different development teams working on a different things. They deploy different stacks, they tear them down using some kind of infrastructure as code. What happens is, as organizations grow, different teams start stepping on each other's toes. They might try to deploy some resources which have the same name. You can handle that. You can have some kind of a naming convention. However, as teams grow, this becomes a little bit difficult to manage. Or team A can destroy some resources of team B. It happened with me. I was working for a client. I deployed a stack. When I came next day, I could not see the RDS which I deployed a day before because someone else thought, okay, it's okay to delete that. Again, you can manage it through IAM and stuff, but it becomes a little bit difficult. So it's better to have separate AWS accounts so that you can maintain the security and naming conventions in different environments. And it's a cleaner approach to have a different AWS account for different business processes. For example, having a dedicated AWS account just for logging, having a dedicated AWS account just for network sharing is a lot more cleaner approach rather than just pushing everything, in a single account. Billing. Again, I'll just give you one example. I was working for a state government client, and they had 15 non-production environments deployed in a single AWS account. And they were always struggling to find out which environment is costing them how much. So instead of having everything in a single AWS account, you can have multiple accounts, and you can just get one invoice, and you can understand the billing better, and you can apply some budgeting constraints, on an account level. Isolation and security. Again, different accounts have different security requirements. For example, if you have a PCI DSS compliant production workload, that would require us separate a different kind of security requirements rather than your dev or non-production environments. Again, if you have non-prod and prod resources deployed in the same account, it's difficult to manage security. But like I mentioned earlier, this multi-account setup comes with its own challenges. Have you guys seen this, orange guy in your organization? This is the governance team who is trying to implement some kind of uniform practices across. They are trying to make sure that all the AWS accounts are secure. But if you have a multi-account setup, it becomes a little bit difficult to manage or have some kind of uniform practices across. Because in this distributed system, you don't have a central control. You have to manage security of these accounts separately. And again, just imagine if you have 100 AWS accounts in your organization, getting 100 different invoices, and then how do you pay them? It's a nightmare to manage the billing in a multi-account setup. So there is always a fight between agility and governance. If you try to bring in more agility, you compromise the governance, or if you try to implement a lot of governance, you compromise the agility. So with Control Tower, you don't have to compromise for any of these. You can have both, and we'll see how. So what is a Control Tower? Control Tower is nothing. It's a service provided by AWS, which lets you set up a multi-account environment, which you can use as the foundation to scale and grow. And it helps you to apply certain governance and security across accounts automatically. Now, how it does that? It uses few components of AWS. So when you deploy a Control Tower first time, basically it deploys certain components by default out of box for you. The first one is AWS organization. So AWS organization is nothing, it's just like a grouping of your accounts so that you can apply certain policies on these accounts. Again, for example, if you have a production account and you want to apply some stricter controls on your production account than non-production, so you can group them in different units called organization units. So in AWS organization, you usually have this root OU on the top. And then you have a master account in that. This master account is like a boss account, which is going to manage all of your member accounts. And then you can have further organizational units as per your requirement. And it also simplifies your billing. You don't have to pay multiple bill invoices for your member accounts. It consolidates all the billing of your member accounts, and you get a single invoice in your management account that you have to pay only once. So it's good. Organization solves all the problems that we discussed earlier. Then what's the Control Tower? Control Tower is something which is built on top of AWS organization, and it provides few more components along with the organization. When we deploy a Control Tower for the very first time, it sets up a landing zone. A landing zone is nothing, it's just a pre-configured multi-account setup, which you can use again as a base, and then you can build your accounts on top of it. It sets up a root OU. It has a management account in that. And this management account is, again, the boss account, which is going to manage the rest of your AWS accounts. Along with the root OU, it creates a few more OUs for you, such as security OU and sandbox OU or workload OU. And it deploys 2 more accounts for you out of the box, such as log archive account. And you can use this log archive account as a central account to collect all the log information in all of your member accounts. So you have a single pane of glass in, across your all of the AWS accounts. So after that, it does not matter. You have 10 accounts, 100 or thousands, you can just have this centralized location to manage everything. Similarly, it creates an audit account for you out of the box. And this audit account can be used for centralizing the auditing services. And we'll go through that once again later on, what these services are. And now look at from the access management point of view. If a new user joins your organization, and if you have a 50 AWS accounts, again, it's going to be a nightmare to provision their access. So what Control Tower does is it also creates an AWS IAM Identity Center, which is nothing AWS SSO directory. And here you can manage the user and access management. You can map users to the accounts and what kind of permissions they need from, again, a central location. And along with that, it applies certain guardrails on OU. So guardrails are just like a policies, like IAM policies that you can apply on each of your OU. For example, if you don't want any of your developer to create a public bucket in production account by, if you want to restrict that, you can actually create a policy and apply that on a production OU so that no one will be able to create a public bucket in your production account. So that's Control Tower. And just to summarize, when you set up a control tower for the first time, it creates a landing zone for you. It establishes certain guardrails. It centralizes the access management, and it automates the compliant account provisioning. Now, the interesting part, I want to take you guys through one of the case study where I got an opportunity to work with one of the clients, and they were using this multi-account setup. However, they were deploying these accounts manually. And when there was a huge demand in the market for them to grow, actually they could not. The process they had, it was just dragging them back. And just to fix that issue, we deployed a control tower, and how we automated everything, I'll just go through that. So in that organization, if development team needed an AWS account, they used to create a ticket in a ticketing system, just saying we need a new AWS account. Again, the same guy, from the previous slide. They monitor that ticketing system. Usually these guys are pretty busy. They have a lot of other stuff going on. They have to manage the security, governance. Whenever they get time, they look at a ticketing system, they pick the ticket and say, oh, you haven't provided us all the information. And then development teams comes back, okay, here you go, here is the information. And then say, oh, why do you need admin access? I'm sure you guys must be familiar with this process. And then development team provides, okay, here is a reason. With this back and forth, it used to take days to weeks to get an AWS account. And they had around 200 AWS accounts at that point of time. And suddenly there was a huge demand in the market, and they wanted to grow very rapidly. They wanted to deploy like 300, 400 accounts pretty quickly. But this whole process was bringing them down. So sometime back, it was not possible to create an account by code, but now AWS gives you an integration of CloudFormation with Control Tower so that you can create accounts programmatically. So what we did, we set up a GitHub repository for them. It had a bunch of CloudFormation stacks which can create an account for you automatically. And then there is a development team. Whenever they needed an AWS account, they could clone that repository. They could look at the config files which were already there. So they knew then and there what kind of information they have to provide. They create a config file for a new account which has some basic information like account name, emails. They submit a pull request in the Git repository, and governance team looks into that. They review the PR. If they are happy, they either approve or deny the PR. If this PR gets approved, the GitHub repository is integrated with BuildKite. If you guys are not aware, BuildKite is a CI/CD tool. And it triggers the cloud control tower to create the account. So what this did is the whole process of creating an AWS account got reduced from weeks to a couple of hours. And it provided a self-service to all of the development team. Whenever they needed an AWS account, they didn't need to create any ticket or reach out to any person or make sure they are available. They could just create a PR, submit it, and as soon as someone approves it, the accounts got created. And security and compliance by default. Now, here the power of Control Tower comes in. When you deploy something through Control Tower, you have security and compliance built in by default. How? So Control Tower itself cannot create an AWS account. It actually uses a service catalog, which is another service in AWS, to create an account. Then service catalog actually fires an API call to create a new account. And as this new account is created, Control Tower automatically applies certain guardrails on top of these accounts, and it can be anything. So there are certain guardrails which AWS provides out of the box, or you can customize it as per your requirement. After that, Control Tower make sure that it has a CloudTrail enabled in your account, and it pushes all the logs into the centralized log archive account to make sure that you have a central location to check all of your logs. Again, just imagine if you have 1,000 accounts in your organization, you don't have to worry about security and governance because Control Tower takes care of that. Similarly, it enables some detective guardrails, and it sends all the notifications into the audit account. Now, let's have a look at it from a security point of view. Just imagine if it doesn't matter if you are in an on-prem system or in a cloud, everyone needs security around whatever resources you are deploying. So usually enabling a security at a scale requires installing some kind of a security tool in all of your accounts. You have to make sure that it is generating some kind of alerts of security events. These are being collected somewhere, and someone is monitoring it and making sure they are looking into the tickets as per the priority. So to enable a security service like that requires a lot of cost, effort upfront, and a lot of expertise in your organization. However, with Control Tower, you don't need to do that. AWS Guard Duty is a managed service provided by AWS. You can set it up just with few clicks. And the good part is that Control Tower is integrated with these service. So as soon as, if you have enabled this, and as soon as you launch a new account, Control Tower automatically enables the Guard Duty in that account and collects all the findings and send it to audit account or any other account which you delegate as an administrator. Again, this is another layer of security that you can build on top of it. Similar to Guard Duty, you can enable AWS Inspector. Again, this is another managed service provided by AWS. AWS Inspector, what it does is basically scans your workload. It scans all of your EC2 instances or containers if you are using, and it lets you know if there is any vulnerability in your system. Similarly, there is a Security Hub. Security Hub is used for maintaining the compliance. If you have workloads which are PCI DSS compliant, you can just enable that compliant in this service. It will start scanning all of your AWS accounts to make sure they are PCI DSS compliant. And if there is any issue, it will alert you, and you can look into that and fix that. So who should use Control Tower? In my opinion, everyone. It doesn't matter if you have a 1 AWS account or 1,000. I think everyone should use it. It's a free service provided by AWS. You just pay for the services what you use on top of it. So go and use Control Tower if you are not using it. And the learning which I had from all of this was why you should have a solid foundation. Thank you. Any questions? Yep.
You just repeat the question.
Yep.
People on the screen, give us a minute to try the microphone and play around.
I'm just curious about deleting accounts. Can it be done via API?
Yep. So AWS does not makes it easy to delete your account from obvious reasons, right? Because someone gets access to your root account or something, they can delete everything. It's a very long process to delete an account. When you provision an account, AWS does not let you, there is a certain period that you have to wait to delete your account, and you have to do it manually. You have to log in as a root user and make sure that it does not have this and that. So there is a lot of complexity around that. So just to answer your question, you can't delete an account with an API, and it is done deliberately to make sure that no one can do it. Any more questions? Yep. Yeah. Yeah, so the management account is again the root account, that like the master account, the boss account, where you actually deploy the control tower. So control tower is being deployed in the management account, and it is controlling everything else. Now, control tower is in the management account itself. Yeah. Any more questions?
Curious how you cope with migrating your organization.
Yep. Yep. So it is possible to, if you are already using an account, it is possible to migrate them into the control tower. It's a little bit tricky, but it's possible. You have to follow certain steps. So you have to make sure that it does not have certain SCPs that will break your system or something like that. So you have to plan for it, but you can actually do that. Sorry, I missed that. Yep, can hear you now.
Yeah. So lots of people have obviously existing accounts with AWS. So if they want to switch over to Control Tower, they want to probably invite their existing accounts to be part of that. With organizations, you can join or invite existing accounts into the organization.
Yes.
Can you bring that up a level to Control Tower, or how does that sort of practically work?
If you set up you already have an organization and you set up a new organization using Control Tower, yes, you can invite your accounts into the new organization.
Mm-hmm.
Again, there is a process to do that. There is some process related to payment, billings, and stuff, because when you unparent an account from an existing organization and move it to a new organization, you have to make sure it has some payments information related, because you cannot have, an orphan account without any payment and stuff. So there is a process, but it is possible to move your accounts from one organization to another.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? Yep.
What about infrastructure of code?
Infrastructure as code. Like I mentioned, some time back, it was not possible to create these accounts through code, but now AWS has provided a support in CloudFormation to create these accounts. So they did enable CloudFormation, and I think they have enabled Terraform also very recently. So you can understand the state of your infrastructure, and even developers can have a look and understand your whole organization in code.
In your experience, does it actually increase the administrative issues, or does it reduce because you are centralizing all the policies, consolidating it?
Yeah.
What's the experience?
Definitely, it does reduce, because I'll just take an example. Let's say if you have 100 AWS accounts in your organization and you don't want anyone to deploy a public S3 bucket, you will have to make sure either they have the right IAM policies, which is very difficult to manage at that level, or you have some kind of policies which is restricting that on an account level. So with this control tower, you can just create one policy and apply on an OU, and all the accounts under that will automatically inherit that policy. So it definitely does reduce a lot of operational burden with the multi-account setup.
When they have multiple accounts and you need to map all those policies.
Yep.
And who takes care of the headache?
Yeah, so definitely there is an initial effort to do that. You have to make sure you have the correct policies applied on your organization level when you are moving from your existing system. And once that is done, it reduces a lot of effort after that. Any more questions?
Easy. Okay. Next presenter is Michael, a senior DevOps engineer at Shine Solutions, here to talk to us about mastering cloud formation.
That's correct.
Easy done.
Thank you.
Easy done.
Too easy,
Make sure that the online people are happy.
That's what I want.
Cool. And video is good.
Cool.
Easy done.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah. Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for coming tonight to listen to me talking to you about mastering AWS CloudFormation and how you can improve your CloudFormation skills. My name is Michael Bloom. I'm a senior DevOps engineer at Shine Solutions, and I've been working with CloudFormation now for nearly 6 years across various different projects. Yeah, before I like to kick off, I'd just like to give you a very quick rundown of what I'm going to talk about today. I'll start off with a very brief introduction about AWS CloudFormation, how you can standardize or what you can do to standardize your CloudFormation templates, how you can design modular and reusable CloudFormation stacks, what ways CloudFormation offers you to share stack information across multiple stacks, and why you should integrate policy-based resources into your stack design, and why you should ensure that your resources are updatable. I'll touch on automated end-to-end testing for CloudFormation. There's a great tool for it. And I've also prepared a little demo to just show what give you a picture of what I've been talking about today, if there's time left at the end of the talk. And I'll close off with a summary of a few important steps which I'd like to give you with on the way. Let's start with the introduction. AWS CloudFormation is basically, I assume most of us are familiar with it. So it's basically infrastructure as code as AWS does it. And it was first introduced in 2011. Over the time, AWS introduced several abstraction layers, which are sitting on top of CloudFormation, allowing you to develop or deploy resources in AWS using CloudFormation, but without actually knowing anything around CloudFormation. And one of the abstraction layer models is serverless application model, or in short, SAM, which allows you to deploy serverless application on AWS, or makes it easier for you to deploy serverless application on AWS. And there's another one, popular one called the Cloud Development Kit, or in short, CDK, which allows you to design your CloudFormation stacks using your favorite coding language, and allowing you to integrate the stack design or the stack development into your code, into your application code base. There are also several other tools available which allow you to write infrastructure as code for AWS, and probably the most popular one, I guess, I assume, is HashiCorp Terraform. What can you do to standardize your CloudFormation template? Now, the very first thing you can do, and powerful too, is using linter tools or validation tools to validate the correctness of your CloudFormation templates. And the best thing you can do to integrate those linting or validation tools as early as possible into your development lifecycle. And one of the most popular validate or linting tools is CFNlint, which is more or less the official CloudFormation linting tools, which is maintained by AWS. And it allows you to validate your CloudFormation templates against the AWS resource specification. But it also allows you to validate your CloudFormation templates against your custom defined AWS resource specification. There's also an alternative, another tool available called CFNNAC, and other than with CFNNAC, the focus for CFNNAC is on identifying if your CloudFormation template or the resource configuration in the CloudFormation template has some insecure configuration in it. So it basically it tries to identify if there are any insecure configuration. An example for it is an EC2 security group, which has an inbound rule, which would allow anyone from the internet to connect to your resources. And CFNNAC would highlight this in the report it generates and advises you to update this particular configuration in your template. If you are using CloudFormation to deploy step functions on AWS, make use of Statelint. Statelint is a great tool to validate the step function templates, the correctness of the step function templates. And what it does, it validates the step function template against the Amazon state language syntax and ensuring the correct state of your step functions. And the best way to integrate them into your development lifecycle is probably due to using some kind of automation to do that. And what I always suggest and recommend to others is to try to integrate those linting tools into your pull request process. So every time you raise a pull request, you can trigger some pipeline or automation process, which will run those linting tools, which runs those linting tools and tries to identify if any of the code changes within the pull request would actually break any of the templates. Another very useful thing to do is to integrate these linting tools into a deployment process via CI/CD as an example. So every time you tool to catch any possibility of an error or of a deployment error of your CloudFormation templates before the actual deployment happens. Another way to do this is using Git hooks, though I personally would go with the pull request and integration of with the pull request and the CI/CD method. A second way to standardize a CloudFormation template is by giving your CloudFormation templates a common structure. And what I usually do with the CloudFormation templates I'm touching on, I like to group all the resources within the CloudFormation template based on by the service, and within the service, I'd like to group them based on the resource type. And I usually define sections in my templates because I usually write my templates in YAML, and I usually use YAML inline comments to define section within my CloudFormation template, which in the end enhances the readability of my template for everyone and also allows me to faster navigate through my template, especially in the later point of time when I need to review it in a few months in the future. And this is an example of how I usually structure my template. So on the top, we see, so that's an example of a resource configuration of a template. On the top, we define a section called IAM resources. And within that section, IAM resources, we define all the IAM related resource types like IAM roles and managed policies. And pretty much the same for all other services as well, where we define S3 resource, a section called S3 resources, and within that section we define some categories like S3 bucket and S3 bucket policies, where we define or group all those resource types together. A third useful way to standardize a CloudFormation template is by separating your resources across multiple smaller templates. Another thing that's also something I like to do is when I start developing my CloudFormation templates, I like to get into modular mindset and I'm asking myself the question basically, what are the functional and the operational purposes of my resources? And based on that, I separate the resources into their own and smaller templates. Following this approach, I feel like that it helps you to improve the modular design improves you to design your CloudFormation stack in a more modular way, giving you also the modular flexibility of the modular design, meaning that you actually can do simplified updates to your templates and to the part of the infrastructure by you doing isolated changes in your infrastructure and in the template, because you do not need to manage a large monolithic CloudFormation template. You can do the change isolated within that small template where you actually have defined that resource, which also simplifies the validation of your change to that particular part of the infrastructure or on the template. On the left side, that's an example project, like that's an example of another project. So we see we have multiple YAML files, which are basically, all of them are CloudFormation templates. And the one I highlighted here is an instance profile CloudFormation template, where we manage all IAM related resources. Then we have another one called messaging, where we manage all messaging related resources like SNS and SQS. We also have another one called monitoring, where we manage all CloudWatch related resources. And then we have, on the bottom, we have a few others called preview publish, publish dispatch, and publish. All those templates down here are infrastructure components of the infrastructure, meaning within these templates, we define all the resources which are directly related to this particular part of the infrastructure, where we place resources like autoscaling group, launch templates, or application load balancers. Modularity and reusability. There are multiple ways to enhance the modularity and reusability in your CloudFormation stack. And one way to do that is by separating your, as mentioned in the slide before, separating your resources into smaller templates or into smaller templates. And one way to do that, and one way I usually do is I like to create what I call a prerequisite stack, or separate my resources in the prerequisite stack and in the main stack. And in the prerequisite stack, I like to place all the resources which have a one-to-n dependency and no other dependency to any prior stack, which then can be reused or consumed by my main stack as many times as possible. So I can have multiple main stacks consuming the same set of resources. Doing so promotes the modularity of your stack design, but it also reduces the deployment time of your main stack, because you're not recreating or creating all the resources it requires in order to run. You're just creating resources which are just part of the main stack, like Lambda code or step function code or other resources. Following this approach, you're also doing a cost optimization of your stack, of a CloudFormation stack, because you're attempting to reuse resources. And as mentioned earlier, this modular design comes with an increased flexibility of your infrastructure, but not only of your infrastructure, also of your development, because you can, as mentioned, you can create multiple main stacks consuming the same resources. Now, which means each of your developers can create their own stack with their own code changes without actually interrupting other developers from their development work, because everyone has their own stack where they test the changes or where they work on. That approach also can lead to a permission-based segregation of resources, which basically means, as in this example where we see on the right side, we have multiple main stacks. We created multiple main stacks, and each of the main stack is consuming resources, which is being created on the left side by multiple stacks. So we see we have a permission stack where we manage IAM-related resources like IAM roles. This stack can be owned and managed by the cloud identity team. Then we have a security stack where we manage all security-related resources like EC2 security group. And this stack can be owned by the cloud security team. And then we have a prerequisite stack where we define all the resources which are required for the main stack in order to run, which is owned by us. Another way to enhance modularity and reusability is the usage of nested stacks in CloudFormation. Nested stacks are basically CloudFormation stacks defined within CloudFormation stacks, or how I call them, stacks within stacks. Using nested stacks, the nested stacks feature enhances the modularization of the CloudFormation stack design, because you're using actually smaller templates to create your stack or to manage your stack. which also allows you to introduce a standard to also standardize your CloudFormation stack design, meaning you can define CloudFormation templates on organization level, which means you can create CloudFormation templates where you standardize the deployment of certain AWS service or certain AWS resources within your organization, which then can be reused by other teams within your organization to deploy these services on AWS. Using nested stacks comes in with one advantage. CloudFormation has an integrated dependency management, which means it tries to resolve all the dependencies prior the deployment of the resource, which has a dependency to another resource. If you're doing it correctly, though, there's definitely a way how you can still do it wrong. You still face dependency issues, but per se, nested stack has automated dependency management. Another advantage is that you can pass in an output generated by one nested stack to another nested stack without actually exporting this output. As in this example, we see in the middle in orange, the orange box represents our main stack. And that particular main stack is creating multiple nested stacks, which are highlighted in yellow, like an RDS stack 1, 2, and an EC2 stack. And each of those nested stacks, they're also referring to other CloudFormation templates or creating other nested stacks using other CloudFormation templates where we define this where we standardize the deployment of certain services, which are highlighted here in pink, like the RDS template. And each of those templates itself can have another reference to another CloudFormation template. On the left side, the green box represents an output, which is being created by our RDS stack 1. And this output is being referred what way does CloudFormation offers you to share stack information across multiple stacks? One way to do that is using export-import functionality within CloudFormation, which basically means you can export any stack defined stack output, which becomes then available within the region for any other CloudFormation stack within the region in the same account to consume, which also means that each export you're defining is unique per account and region. Hence why I think it's very important to parameterize those export names as much as possible. But in general, parameterize as much as possible in your CloudFormation templates. And also try to include unique identifiers into those export names because they are unique per region. In each name. So it's comes in handy when you include the stack name of the stack who's managing that particular output, and also when you include the environment name into the exported output. One thing to keep in mind when you're using export-import to share stack information is an export which is being imported by another stack cannot be deleted, nor can the value of that export be updated. Hence why if you're planning on if you're using export import and you're thinking about deleting or removing that export from your templates, don't do that because you may not know who else is importing this particular exported output. Hence why I would suggest to try to preserve exported outputs. And if you need to create a new or if you need to update the value of an exported output, try to create a new output with a new export name. And if you're running a single stack version in your environment, which you keep on updating, try to avoid using export import to share stack information because it can you can run into issues which can become very tricky to fix. In this example, which is the same example as before, we see the permission stack is creating an IAM role, and this IAM role is needed by our main stack because it requires this IAM role to attach it to another resource as an example. And the way how the main stack gets the IAM role ARN is by importing the export. So the permission stack is creating an export with that particular name. And our main stack template has a reference defined within the template, which looks very much like that. So it has this import value, and then then the name of the exported output. And each stack with that particular reference is importing that stack output. Now, as mentioned, while this is being imported, we cannot delete that export, nor can we update the value. So let's say we need to update the IAM role ARN for our main stack. The best way to do that is by creating a new output in the permission stack with a new name, and then we update the reference in our main in our main stack template to use the new export name. And then we run a stack update operation or a stack creation operation on our, and the next time we do that, it will use the new exported output. A second way to share stack information across stack is using dynamic references and SSM parameters. Dynamic references allow you to resolve SSM parameters during a stack operation. And with SSM parameters, they do have the same limitation as export names. They are unique per account and region, hence why same here, parameterize as much as possible of the SSM parameter name and try to include the stack name, which is managing that SSM parameter and the environment name. Other than with export-import, SSM parameters, which are being referred in the dynamic reference statement within your CloudFormation template, can be deleted. But if you're running a stack operation or a stack update operation on the stack, which has a deleted a reference to a deleted SSM parameter, that operation will fail. And the operation includes the creation, deletion, and an update of a stack. Another advantage is you can go and update the value of the update the value of the SSM parameter, and the next time you run the stack update operation on your CloudFormation stack, which has a dynamic reference with a dynamic reference configured, that dynamic reference can get resolved to the updated value without doing any changes to your CloudFormation stack. My suggestion is if you're running a single stack version in your environment and you need to share stack information across multiple stacks, try to use SSM instead of using export-import. This on the top here is an example of the dynamic reference resolve statement. We see we define the resolve statement, and then we define the service the service we want to use for that resolve statement, and then we define the parameter name of the SSM parameter we want to resolve within our templates. You can define the version of this SSM parameter you want to resolve the value to, but you don't have to. If you do not define one, then the value gets always updated to the latest value version or the latest version of the SSM parameter. Same example. This time the permission stack, instead of storing it or creating an exported output with where the IAM role ARN is stored, this time it creates an SSM parameter and stores the IAM role ARN in that SSM parameter. Each of our main stack has a dynamic reference configured with that particular resolve statement, where we say resolve, then SSM for the SSM service, and then the name of the SSM parameter we want to resolve. Now let's say the value of that SSM parameter updates because we have created a new IAM role. Then a new version of the SSM parameter gets created with the updated value. And because we haven't defined the version here at the end of that resolve statement, the next time we run a stack operation on our main stack, the value of that SSM parameter gets resolved to the updated value. Policy-based resources. Policy-based resources are actually a fantastic thing within CloudFormation. And the reason for that is because they are enhancing the modularity of your stack design and the parameterization of your stack design. Because they're detaching the policy configuration from the resource configuration and bringing the policy configuration closer to the resource where you actually need access to. And On the left side, there are a few examples of some policy-based resources like security group egress, ingress rules, IAM managed policies, S3 bucket policies, so on and so forth. And same example again, this time the permission stack is creating an exported output where it stores the IAM role ARN. Now, as mentioned earlier, each of our main stack is using this IAM role ARN to attach it to another resource. And that particular resource needs to have access to a resource which we are creating or managing within our main stack. Now, there are multiple ways to achieve this. One way is to define an inline policy in the same template where the IAM role is being managed, where we define, hey, we want to have that permission. And then we can use a wildcard for the resource statement. But using wildcards in policies or permission policies is definitely not recommended, so we can't go that way. The second approach would be we could try to predict the resource name of the resource we want to have access to, which you can do, but it's very hard to predict a name which you may not know yet, because CloudFormation manages the resource name for you. A third way is using the managed policy. And what we're doing here is within that permission stack, we are managing the IAM role ARN and just providing it with a base policy. And then within our main stack, we define the resource type IAM managed policy. And that resource type gets created or defined within the same template where we actually need to have access to. So we define the IAM managed policy resource type, and then we provide the property roles, and we use the import value to import the exported IAM role ARN, which basically means for that resource type, after the creation of the managed policy, attach that managed policy to that particular IAM role. And then we define the policy where we say, hey, we want to have a Lambda invoke action function. We want to invoke a Lambda function, and then we're using the ref Lambda resource to the ARN after the Lambda resource was created. Updatable resources. General recommendation is try to avoid naming resources when you create resource or when you manage resources in CloudFormation, because you can run into issues, especially when you need to update properties of a resource where you have defined the name, which require a replacement of that resource when that property has been changed. And if you do this and did this and you have encountered, then you may encounter an error which looks very much like this, that it tries to update the resource, but it found that resource has an explicit name defined, and that disallows CloudFormation from updating that resource because it means it requires it to replace that resource. So the only way left for you to do to create that resource again or to get the updated property deployed is by renaming your resource within your template, so you're enforcing the recreation of that particular resource. Though this may have some unforeseen consequences because you're creating a new resource with a new name, which you may have referred somewhere else. So you may need to modify multiple CloudFormation templates to match the new name. So instead of naming your resource, prefer tagging your resources, meaning define the tag key name to your resource, and as a value, provide the actual resource name you want to provide to that, or you want to give that particular resource. And if you're managing Lambda function and step function with CloudFormation, make sure you're including a dynamic reference in the S3 key property to ensure that your Lambda function or step function are getting updated if there has been some changes to the code. Few years ago, while working on an AWS project, I migrated the AIM Open Cloud project to a cloud native application or CloudFormation native application for the AWS Quickstart project. And one aim of that whole project was that the that this project needs to pass the automated end-to-end testing. And the automated end-to-end testing tool used is TaskCat. So TaskCat is an CloudFormation end-to-end testing tool developed and maintained by AWS, and it's very simple to run. So you basically need to configure your TaskCat configuration file where you say, hey, use this CloudFormation template for the testing, and then you can run TaskCat using TaskCat test run on the command line or in your CI/CD pipeline. It comes with some great features. It has an automated linting integrated, so it validates the CloudFormation templates if they're actually valid and can be deployed on CloudFormation without any errors. And it automates the deployment of this CloudFormation template onto AWS across multiple regions. It generates a test result at the end of the runtime, which looks very much like this. So on the left side, we see the test case it has run. And then here we see the regions where it ran those test cases. And then we also see the stack name used to run the test case. It also gives us, tells us if the test was successful or not. In this case, the test wasn't successful, which can be which is highlighted with the red box, and the text create failed. It also allows you to have a look at the CloudFormation log files, so you can go through the CloudFormation log files one by one and see what happened during the stack creation. Demo time. I think I still have a couple of minutes left, so I'm just going to quickly demo you some of the validation tools, the linting tools, and if we have time, TaskCat. Let's start with CFN lint. So CFNlint is very simple to run. You basically type in the command CFNlint, and then you provide the paths to the CloudFormation templates you want to validate. And then it outputs you something very much like this. So we see it has identified a few issues with the CloudFormation templates I have created. One of the issues it found is that I actually have CloudFormation parameters defined, which are not being consumed within my CloudFormation templates. It does have a problem with it, so it highlights it. Another one is it found a few error messages or a few errors in my CloudFormation template. One error is that I have provided an invalid or unsupported resource type in my resource configuration. And the other errors it found here are related to that I have that I'm using an intrinsic function to a resource which doesn't exist in my CloudFormation template. So it does pick up those things, those things before you actually run the deployment of that template on CloudFormation. Let's have a nice thing here is it actually tells us which CloudFormation template has where it has identified the error. And also highlights us the line of code where it has identified the error. So if we have a quick look into our template, which is here, then we see we've defined the that's line 27, and it's complaining about that particular resource type, which becomes clear because it's basically a typo error. It should be EC2 security group, not security groups. So once we remove the S and start it all over again, it should now, the errors should disappear, as we can see here. The warning is still there. If you have a look at the exit code here, we see the exit code is not 0, which means it gives us a warning and it exits with a non-zero exit code, which means if you have that integrated into your automation process, that automation process would now fail because that application failed with a non-zero exit code. So there are two ways to fix that. The first, or to get around that, the first thing is you actually go into your template and fix this. The other way is that you can provide a command line option saying ---- ignore check, and then you can provide a set of check IDs which you want to ignore. So in this case, we want to ignore that particular warning, and we see, hey, it's all good now. And if you run an exit code check, we see exit code 0, the automation passes. Let's have a quick look to CFNNAC. CFNNAC runs very similar to CFNNAC. You define the command and then you provide the path to the templates you want to validate. And if you run this, we see it generates a report down here. It tells us the templates it has tested and how many failures and warnings it has identified in those templates. And if we scroll further up, we see, oh, it has actually identified warnings in one of my templates. We see 2 warnings. One is it identified an EC2 security group, which has an inbound rule defined, which is not /30, or CIDR defined an inbound rule, which is not /32. And the other one is it actually found the CIDR, which would allow anyone from the internet to connect to my resource. If we have a quick look to the exit code, we see for CFNAC per default, a warning is not a reason to exit with a non-zero exit code, though there's the command line option, which would allow CFNAC to fail at that stage. Again, there are multiple ways to fix it. One way is obviously you can go into your CloudFormation template and fix this, what CFNAC told you is wrong with it. But if that's actually a valid configuration, so you actually did that configuration on purpose, then you can define a metadata on that particular resource which caused the error. So you can define the metadata, and then you define a metadata for CFNAC. And then you can provide the option or the property rules to suppress. And then you can define a list of rules you want to suppress the check for in CFNAC. And you need to define the ID and the reason why you want to suppress that particular rule. So if you do that, then we see the test passes now. So we see that all of our templates should have 0, 0, 0. Looks good to me. Let's have a quick look to Taskhead. That's okay. So I have a couple of CloudFormation templates here, which I configured in Taskhead configuration. Before I jump into the Taskhead configuration, I just want to quickly show what it actually outputs. So we see here that it actually does a linting for my CloudFormation templates, and they all pass, which is great, because otherwise it would have failed here. And on the bottom, we see it's creating now 3 CloudFormation templates, meaning Taskhead is running 3 test cases. And we see also the status of the test case. So create in progress means the CloudFormation stack is still being in progress. And if you have a look to the Taskhead configuration, that's a very simple example of a Taskhead configuration. So you define the parameters for the parameters of your CloudFormation templates. But further down is more interesting, because further down is the test section where you define the test cases you want to run. So you define the name of the test case, you define the region, which regions you want to test this particular CloudFormation template, the template URL, the local path to the template, and then you can also override the default parameters with custom values. While this runs, I'll just go very quickly to some other parts of the templates. As mentioned earlier with nested stacks, if you're not familiar with it, this particular CloudFormation template we see here is creating 2 nested stacks. One is called Cognito stack, and the other one is called Cognito user pool client ID. But what's important here is we define the type CloudFormation stack, and then we provide the property template URL. And the template URL has to be an S3 location, because basically it has to be a location where CloudFormation has access to. So hence why it has to be an S3 location. Further down is another example where we create another nested stack, but this time we're providing a few parameters to that nested stacks. And one parameter we are defining here is a parameter called parameter value. But what's important is the get attribute intrinsic function we are using here, because what we are doing here is we are trying to retrieve the output which is created by our Cognito nested stack and pass it over to that particular nested stack, to the other nested stack. An example of how you can export an output is you can see it here. So we define our output within the output section, and then you basically just define the export property, and then you provide the name of the export. That's all I can demo you. Let's have a quick look at that one. So we see 2 test cases have been completed, and another one is still in progress. So, which is good. Let's close up with some general recommendations around CloudFormation. Try to automate the validation of your CloudFormation templates because it's very easy to do, and the win is it gives you just an easy big win. When you design your CloudFormation stack, try to keep a modular mindset, keep your templates small, and try to design, not even try to do it, design your templates in a way that you can deploy multiple versions of the same stack within the same region and account. Therefore, parameterize as much as possible within your CloudFormation stack. Try not to hard code any information, and do not do manual changes on resources which are being managed by CloudFormation, because those changes are getting overwritten anyway the next time you run a stack operation. Try to include policy-based resources and ensure your resources are updatable, and if suitable for your use case, automate testing of your CloudFormation templates. If you want to get in touch with me, feel free to send me an email, connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you want to have a look at some of the CloudFormation examples or samples, have a look at my GitHub repository. The repository is called CloudFormation Samples. Yeah, thank you very much. Any questions?
Any questions? Yes. He's done.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Learned a lot. Haven't used nested stacks before, but with a single stack, when you deploy, if it doesn't deploy, then it rolls back, right? Either deletes the resources, or if you update, it just changes to previous state. What happened if within nested kind of combination of stacks, one of the stacks failed? Can you roll back the whole thing?
That's a good question. Well, I guess if you run the rollback will only happen on the stack which was actually updated, which reverts the changes and goes back to the previous state of the stack. Well, what do you mean with the whole thing? Because the whole thing is being
maybe you have your EC2, you have what else? Your database is a separate stack. What if one of them fail, but you want everything to roll back?
Yeah, so each of the stacks are independently being managed, and you want to roll back all the. Yeah, it's one system. Yeah. That's a very funny scenario, but you probably have to go back to the previous version of the of each of the CloudFormation templates and deploy them one by one. Because that's the advantage here with nested stacks. When you use a nested stacks, CloudFormation knows about the dependency of those different stacks, and that's why it would automatically roll all the changes back and revert to the previous state of the stack. While if they're independently being deployed, then it's up to you to revert those changes.
So basically, you go for this scenario when you want to have that independence. You don't treat it as one system.
I do have troubles understanding you because
Yeah, so in that scenario, if you want them coupled together, nested stacks works really well, because if one of your dependent stacks would fail, then the nested, like the root stack, will see that one of its components has failed and therefore roll the whole job back. So any of the nested stacks will also roll back to the last known good state, or in the event that it's a new stack, it'll delete it all and get there. If you want each service to be independent, then you're probably best to deploy each as an individual component. But then in the event that one rolls back, you then take the responsibility of managing what that means for all of your other services. If you're doing a microservices architecture where, it's no harm, no foul, cool. If things are tightly coupled, nested stacks is probably the best way to go.
Apologies if anyone is confused about the audio. For everyone who's in person here, we have no control over the floor polisher that's going in the background. Sorry.
Yeah, because each of the nested stacks is a resource within the parent stack. it behaves the same way as if you deployed an EC2 instance and there was an issue. It would notice that that resource failed, so therefore it would roll the whole stack back.
Any more questions?
Or not?
Isn't it now like open tofu or something? Whatever the let's not go down that road. Let's not go down that. Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Easy done. Don't want that. We want that one. Is my laptop working? Yes, it is. Don't we like it when technology does what it's supposed to do? Cool. All right. So, thank you very much to both of our speakers for this evening. We are running a couple of minutes over, so I'll try and keep this a little bit quick. Marketplace segment. Is anybody hiring in the process of hiring, got open roles that they want to sort of call out at the moment? No, nobody's looking for anybody.
That's a whole lot of silence.
Okay, well that was a quick, easy marketplace segment. Congratulations! Yay! Okay, so thank you again to our sponsors for helping us run tonight. Gold sponsor CMD and our silver sponsors Versant, Civo, and our event sponsor NAB. Without your assistance, this event wouldn't happen. Next meetup is, and take a note of the date on this one, it is not the last Wednesday of the month. The last Wednesday of the month would be the 29th. But as we said before, that would fall smack dab in the middle of reInvent. So because you'll all be busy watching, the live streams and YouTube channels and all that sort of stuff, we are actually going to run a week early. So it will be Wednesday the 22nd. Keep an eye out on socials for speaker details and all of those sorts of things. As I said before, if anybody wants to talk sponsorships or wants to look at sponsoring the user group, please feel free to reach out. And other than that, thank you for coming, and we will see you all again next month.